Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. A few days ago, I was walking the dog and doing some thinking. That's where I do a lot of my best thinking, I think, when I'm out on the street walking the dog. And I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do about the podcast this week? It's going to come out on Saturday, and that's my birthday, my 45th birthday. And although I have some great conversations on deck, and I could easily unleash one of those today, it just felt like an opportunity to do something special, to give myself a birthday present by way of the podcast. As I was walking the dog, I was thinking, 45 is such a neat age because you're kind of equidistant between a college-age person and a retired person. It's the same distance in years between me and a 20-year-old and me and a 70-year-old. And I feel, honestly, like I can kind of relate in either direction. You're right in the prime. You're in midlife, I guess that's why they call it that. And I started thinking, maybe the thing to do is just have a series of conversations with people who I love, admire, respect, turn to regularly anyway, and talk about what is important to them, what they think is important to live a good life, what they care about, what their ambitions are, what their fears are, what matters to them. And because of the nature of this show, also, what is the role of the arts in all of that, particularly music? How does music help serve that journey? And so that's what I did. I spent the last couple of days giving myself this gift. I called a handful of people, many of them good friends, some people I have talked to on occasion in the past, and I use this as an opportunity to reach out again. And everybody I talked to kind of represents a different era in life. I started out, for example, talking to my daughter Sol and my niece Zelta, both of whom are 10 years old, and then I kind of took it from there. I'll check in with you along the way to let you know where we are, where we're headed, and where we've been. But I don't want to waste too much time setting it up. So just a reminder, third-story.com is the place for you to go, sign up, subscribe, get involved, and check the archive where you can visit the full-length episodes with almost everybody that you'll hear from here today. Also, then it's patreon.com/thirdstorypodcast to make your own birthday donation, should you be so inclined. Without further ado, here it is, The Art of Aging Gracefully, starting with Sol and Zelta.
Hello.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello.
Girls, first of all, please, one at a time, state your name and age.
I'll go first because I'm older. My name is Zelta, and I am 10 years old.
Oh, and what is your relationship to me?
You are my uncle.
And you, young lady?
My name is Sol. I am 10 years old, and you are my dad.
And what is the relationship between the two of you?
We're cousins.
Very nice. All right, so it's been established that you're both 10 years old.
Yeah.
Do you know how old I'm turning this year?
Yes,
45.
45. What does that sound like to you to be 45?
Younger than my mom.
Good. So it's age is relative then. You're always...
But it's also just a number.
It's just a number.
It doesn't change who you are.
I like that. Can you imagine being 45 yourself?
No.
No, honestly, I feel like when I'm 45...
We're going to be completely different people.
Wait, you just said age doesn't change who you are.
No, but we'll be to our children like, back in the day, we had laptops to do work instead of holograms.
And now we have nice projectors that
Nice
project
watch
off our
projectors.
face.
So when you imagine the future, mainly what you imagine is how technology will change in your life.
Basically.
And the world. The world is going to be much different. When we're 45, that'll be 35 years from now.
35. Wow.
A lot can happen in 35 years.
A lot can happen in 35 years. I feel like everybody says, in the future, there will be flying cars. But they've been saying that for
They've
too
been saying
long.
that since like 1980. But
There's no flying
it's like
cars.
2008. Flying cars and hoverboards. 2021. COVID.
But
no
there's
flying cars.
Still no flying cars.
When do you think you stop being young and become old? What is the age when you become...
18.
18 is when
I
youth
agree,
is over?
18 or
Because
19.
18 is like, you're like an official adult, I feel like, because you can vote and do stuff. And you can drive, even though you can do it when you're 16. But still.
Maybe 20, actually.
20. Maybe it's 20.
I think 20, because that feels like a sort of time when you kind of exit and you get your own world and Because I feel like when you're 16 or 18, you still live with your parents.
No, well, some people go to college. I mean, actually, a lot of people go to college.
That's true.
What do you think it means to live a good life?
This is kind of weird, but I'm going to say everyone has a mixed life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's not a definition of a good life. Because like if you live in a mansion and you have tons of money and everything you own is made out of gold, then some people would consider that a good life, but maybe that's not a good life.
You could be sitting at home by
you
yourself
have a
all the
fine
time.
life with your family and at home. Like you don't have to have a ton of money and like a huge home and a ton of stuff.
And a golden toilet.
So, okay, we've established you don't have to have all of the items in your house made out of gold to live a good life.
Yes.
What about being famous? Is that important to live a good life?
I mean, so for some people it is. Like some people, like if they're famous, it's very hard to be famous. So, and it puts a lot of pressure on people. So I feel like if you're famous, you have a lot of stress.
I feel like some people don't like it because there's a lot of pressure.
What about friends and family?
That's a big part of a good life.
Yeah, I think if you don't have any friends or family or a place to stay, then that's not a good life for you.
What about interesting work?
Some people can't like have the job that they want, but a lot of people are happy with their jobs. Like you, like this is your job and you're really happy with it. But some people are not happy with their jobs. And I think if you're happy with your job and you have interesting jobs, you're definitely happy. If you don't have a job, you should still be grateful that you have a job.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's time for you to switch jobs.
If you're not happy with your job.
Some people don't like having jobs. They like to be a home person.
Mm-hmm.
They could have no job and they could just be at the house. If you have children, then it's like better if you're home because then you can like help your children.
Yeah.
Even if you don't, I don't know what that means then. I feel like that just means that you're like lazy.
So lazy, right. So productivity, feeling productive, feeling like you're doing something with your time is important, do you think?
For some people it is, and for some people it isn't. It really depends on what kind of person you are.
I find you two to be highly accepting of many versions of a happy life. It seems to me that you're willing to accept all different kinds of ideas of what it would mean to be happy. And I appreciate you both for that you say, well, like, is it important to be married to be happy, do you think?
No. I mean, if you're married, you're married.
Yeah.
If you're happy, you're happy.
Yeah.
If you want a divorce,
yeah,
you get a divorce.
Yeah.
You could be happy about that.
Yeah, you could be happy about
If
that.
that makes you happy, then
How long do you hope to live?
Till I'm 100.
I don't have a number. I just hope to live as long as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Same. But I would definitely like to live to a very old age because if some people have to, like, some people are very young when they live to as long as they can.
Yeah.
So,
are there things that you think you can do to try to maximize the amount of time
Like
that you
have
live?
a healthier life.
definitely be healthy and make sure you always like talk about things and don't keep it bottled up and like go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the doctor
and
if
and
necessary.
exercise, very important, and eat good food
Mm-hmm.
and socialize.
That's true.
Socializing.
Socializing is important too. I wonder if you think it's important to have some kind of relationship with the arts, music, painting, drawing, dancing, acting.
I mean, if you're interested in the arts, then yes, it'd be good to have a part of the arts in your life. But if you're not interested, then you should focus on what you're interested in.
If you're really interested in that stuff, then go for it. If you're not, then just stay with what you have. I know that me and Soul both take singing and piano lessons, and that's definitely the musical arts.
What does music mean to you in your lives? How does music function in your life? How do you think about music? How important is music to you?
I think it's very important to me.
I mean, I think it's really important to me because a lot of the people I love and I know relate to music. And also, I think it's just music is important because
It can keep you happy.
it can definitely keep you happy and it can definitely make you have a good life.
You also don't have to make it or sing it or play it.
You can
You
just
can listen
listen.
to it,
Right.
and that can make you happy.
It can make you feel a lot of things. Like maybe sometimes you'll
Sad,
want to feel
even.
sad, and so you'll put music on to feel sad, or you want to remember something. Do you choose music that you want to listen to based on the way you want to feel sometimes?
Yeah.
Definitely.
I like to listen to music when I'm drawing in the living room. I like to put on my headphones and I just blast like Billie Eilish in my ears and like it makes me happy and it makes me sad.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I love that music so much, but it also makes me so sad because I have so many feelings about it and for it.
It brings out a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
I think that that's a really interesting point that you two are making about how music, you know, sometimes we think, oh, is it happy? Is it sad? Is it major? Is it minor? Is it
You all
fast?
feel
Is it
different
slow?
ways about it. We can all feel different ways. Some people can listen to a song that a lot of people think is really sad, and they can think, oh, I like this song.
Yeah, and as you said, you can feel multiple emotions about something. But what I want to know is, since you both sing, how has that changed the way you listen to music? Like, do you listen to songs sometimes and think, I would like to sing this, or I wonder how they sang
Yeah,
that?
I
Or
mean,
somehow sometimes I think, like, this sounds like me,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
or I
like,
sound like them.
yeah, same. Like, I find that when I practice a song in singing lessons, I sort of like feel connected to that song.
Mm-hmm. It
I
feels like
feel
it
like
belongs to you a
it's-
little more.
Yeah.
Girls, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up this excellent interview?
Yes.
Yes.
Very important. 45 does not mean you're halfway.
No, it does not.
Thank you, girls. I love you both.
Me too.
We love you too.
Sol and Zelta, age 10, there they were. I think you'll find as we move through these conversations that their commentaries were among the wisest. I think they were some of the most astute commentators that I spoke to in this exercise. But next up, Guthrie, Zane, Gruber, Baruth, an excellent young musician who I met a few years ago when I was home visiting family in Madison, Wisconsin. He now lives in Los Angeles, at least he does this week. And he's been a real buddy to me ever since we were introduced a handful of years ago. His high school music teacher, who's an old friend of mine, suggested that we meet. And from the second I sat down to have coffee with him, I felt like I was talking to an old pal. So even though he's just turned 21, he was 20 when we spoke earlier this week, and he turned 21 the next day, I feel totally at ease with him, and I love checking in with him. He's somewhat exasperated by being told that he's an old soul, but on a certain level he is, although you'll hear he's certainly young at heart.
Leo?
Did I get you?
You did get me.
Are you asleep?
No, I was trying to figure out how to tell this girl who I like to hit me back.
What are the options?
Well, she hasn't hit me back, which is the main problem. We talked like every day when I was in Europe, and I came back, and now it seems like she's kind of blowing me off, which kind of sucks.
Where are you?
I'm in LA. I'm in Highland Park.
So you got back to LA. You got back from Europe. You're back in LA. You're trying
Yeah.
to figure out how best to communicate with a girl who you are interested in.
Well, she hasn't texted me back in like 2 days. Like 2 days ago, Monday morning, I was like, hey, are we going to hang out later? Because we had texted. And then I said, hey, can we hang out later? Because I wanted to like tell her that I liked her, But I didn't want to do it over text because that's lame to me. I'm not into that. And geez, like I said, oh, we're gonna hang out later, and she never said anything. That was 2 days ago. So now I've got a concern that maybe she didn't get the text. That seems unlikely. That's because I think usually texts work, but she does have like a Honduras number, so it's possible.
She got a Honduras number.
Yeah. So it's possible that like it legitimately didn't go through, but that seems like wishful thinking. I think more likely she's lost interest, but I don't know.
So Zane, I'm talking to you on the last day of your teens, of your 20s. You're 20 years old. You're 20.
My last day of my 20s.
The last day of your 20.
Yeah.
So you're 20 years old. You'll be 21 tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
It's hard to believe it because I feel like I've known you for a long time, and
you know me since I was 17.
Yeah, when you're 20, it's a long number of years.
I know, man. I was thinking about this. Honestly, I think about this all the time. But because you asked me, I'm trying to think about it in a more effective way.
Yeah.
But this is like the first birthday I've had since maybe forever. I'm trying to think if there was a birthday I had where it wasn't like super scary. Every time I've had a birthday, it's like just dread.
And what are you dreading? What do you dread with every birthday?
I don't know, getting older. Like what? So Leo, you were like a young musician who like probably got pat on the back when you were a young musician.
Yeah.
Didn't you ever like associate being young with being like somebody who people liked?
This question that you're asking me right now only speaks to the idea that when I talk to you, I often feel like we're more or less peers, because the question that you just asked me is the question I called to ask you, and it's the question I'm calling to ask everybody. Yes, when I was young, I don't know if I was talented. People thought I was. I got a lot of positive feedback from a young age, and I associated talent with youth, and I associated success with youth. And
100%.
And then at a certain point, you just, no matter how long you hold on to it, no matter if you try to dye your hair, or put the contact lenses in, or wear the skinny jeans, or have a young girlfriend, it doesn't matter. You are not young anymore. That's not you. You're still young.
I know, but it's still like, when I was 18, I thought, holy fuck, I'm going to be 19. I'm going to be so old,
Right. So,
or did you have that? Because especially like when I was turning 17, I thought, fuck. It's like you compare yourself to your friends who are better than you at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, well, he was here when he was this age.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And so 17, 18, 19 really were like sucky. And so was 20. But 20 was weird because it's like, now I'm not a teenager. Now everybody's going to think I'm an old fuck,
Yeah, but the other interesting thing about you, man, and it was true of me too, is that for some reason, you're both obsessed with being young, and then also, like, most of your friends are much older than you.
I know. What a fucking... it sucks to have that duality in you, because I can't commit to either.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I really want to have some young friends, and then I have young friends, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, you guys suck. And then I'm friends with some old guys, and it's like, geez, like, you guys are way too busy to hang out.
Yeah.
Yep. It's so weird because, you're always thinking, oh, Prince put out what was he, 20 in his first album or something, 19?
Yeah, younger, yeah.
And you're like, damn it,
Yeah, but then Bill Withers was cleaning airplane bathrooms, for a long time.
Well, and this, I was thinking about this. I was driving over to pick up a friend to go to the airport soon, and I was thinking, like,
maybe you should apply for a job. Maybe now is your time to apply for a job fixing bathrooms. This is the time.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, right now I've been comparing myself to Prince's first album. Like, is there going to be a time, and I'm really hoping there's not going to be a time where I think, where I'm comparing myself to Bill Withers' first album.
Wait, why do you hope there's not going to be a time? That was a great record.
I don't want to wait till I'm like 34 or whatever to put out my first record.
Okay, this is good. So let's talk about what you want. What do you hope for your life? I'm not even talking about, like, tomorrow. I'm just saying, like, if you let yourself imagine Guthrie, Zane, Gruber, Baruth. He's 45 years old.
Ah, Jesus Christ, dude. Is that what you are?
That's what I'm turning.
Oh, man.
You don't even know how to talk to me now that you found that out. And what would be a good outcome for you? What would be a good thing to imagine that your life is?
When I'm turning 45?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Did you have an answer for that when you were 20?
I can't remember. That's one of the first things that goes when you get older is your memory.
Leo, I don't even fucking have a place to stay in 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. I guess I'd like to, Leo, I really would like to be famous. I think that would just be so weird.
Yeah. And
did I tell you about that situation with the French girls in France?
No.
Okay, so I was in this tiny town in France, Angoulême, and I didn't know nobody. And so I got Tinder, right, to meet some young people. And so I met this girl, right, and I hung out with her and her friend for like a few hours one night. It was just super friendship, it wasn't romantic or sexual. And we hung out for a few hours, and then the next day we hung out for like 6 hours or something. We walked around and just shot the shit, and they were like theater girls. They were really weird,
Yeah.
I dropped them off at their friend's house. It was like a Friday night, and they said, "Oh, well, we might drop by in the morning," because they knew where I was staying. It was my friend Sandler. I woke up the next morning, and they were standing. I'm in the attic. I'm sleeping in a child's bed in the attic, and they're standing in the center of the attic. And I'm just, it's a very strange way to wake up. And so I walk past them. I go down the stairs. I go to the bathroom. I wash my face off, and I walk out to see if they're still there. And they like walk down the stairs, and they're out in the living room. That's what I want my day to be like every day.
You want to wake up every morning with two French girls standing in front of your bed.
Well, but specifically in an attic. I didn't even know how they got in.
That's what you aspire to. That would be a good way to live your life.
So here's the thing, Leo, is that I think fame would bring that type of weirdness every day. And it gets to recontextualize my brain, which I think is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah. So you're thinking maybe you could just continue to behave the way you do now, and the things that people say are quirky now, they'll say, well, he's famous, so of course that's how he is.
Exactly. Except maybe with a little more charm than that, because that does make it sound a little like pretentious.
And what role do you think music will play in your life, and what role has it played?
Man, these are such big questions. I think I'm smart until you ask me a question, Leo.
Music is what brought us together, and music technically is what our friendship is kind of based on. And I think music often is a form of transportation. I think being a musician ultimately for me is the mode of transportation on which I ride through my life. But, you know, for different people it means different things. Some people eat, breathe, sleep, dream music, and that's what it means to them. You, I think in some ways, music will save your life, and if you're not careful, it might kill you too. But right now, I think music has the potential to save you.
Yeah, that may be true. Music it's kind of all I do, and right now it feels like a bit of an addiction. I don't know if we've talked about this, but like I don't really go any time without. But I'm constantly listening to music. This is something that's dangerous for me right now. I think is my consumption of music is not natural. You know, we used to have a limitation of records.
Yeah.
And I used to have that because I didn't have Spotify until 2 years ago. Now I can have everything, which is just, I don't know how well I adjust for the new context, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're like an old guy trapped in a new guy's body.
Well, perhaps. I was thinking about the whole old soul thing earlier and how much I hate that. There's this lady telling me that she's an old soul, and it's like, you shouldn't say it about yourself. You know, other people say it to you, and you say, oh, shucks, you know? You don't say it about yourself.
Guthrie, Zane, Gruber, Baruth, I want to talk to you more, but I got to make more phone calls and find out how people feel about growing old.
Okay, man, I hope this helped.
This was very enlightening.
All right, man, I'll talk to you later.
All right, happy birthday.
Peace. Thanks, man.
Well, Michael Thurber is a friend of the podcast and a good friend to me also. I turn to him regularly to check in on questions technical, existential, artistic, logistical, and the like. He's a very fine composer. A show that he's written the music for called Goddess is making its way up the musical theater ladder right now. He's also an incredible singer-songwriter, educator. He teaches at NYU Clive Davis. He's a legit bass player, a serious musician, and a friend of the podcast. I love this guy like a brother. I caught him in the Delta Lounge at JFK on his way to London because he's in his mid-30s, and this is an important moment for him. You can feel from him the kind of optimism and excitement of somebody who's in a moment right now, in a good professional and personal moment right now.
Yo.
Are you at an airport right now?
Yeah, I'm in a lounge. I'm in the Delta Lounge.
You're going to fly to London tomorrow.
Well, tonight, 11 p.m. It's 9:45 right now.
It's Thanksgiving.
I don't even know what that means anymore, but happy Thanksgiving.
How old are you?
34.
What does it feel like to be 34? Like if you put yourself in the headspace of the 20-year-old Michael Thurber, you know, you were already very devoted to making music at 20 years old. You were already on the path. What do you think you hoped for yourself? Were you even able to imagine what did it mean to be in your 30s?
Yeah, for me, I imagined it, you know, I would say on a daily basis. I always felt like I was somebody that would catch my stride right around now. I always felt like from, you know, mid-30s to mid-50s would be my time. So it makes sense to me. You know, and I do feel older than I used to, but in some ways I actually feel way more energetic than I ever used to.
What does the idea of aging mean to you today? How do you feel as you grow older every birthday? What does it represent to you today? Becoming
more aligned. That's what it's all about for me. Becoming more in touch with purpose, with, you know, what makes me feel like I'm contributing to the world and what makes me feel like I'm having fun all at the same time. Purpose, you know, centered alignment, less fragmentation, more wholeness, oneness. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about.
How tied to your sense of identity and development is your work?
100%. 100%.
Do you think a relationship to the arts somehow gives you an alternate vision or view of the world and your life, let's say, compared to people who aren't living in that space? I mean, you grew up around people who weren't professional musicians necessarily. Like, do you think you live kind of outside of the normal flow of the way people are thinking about their lives?
I mean, I think when you're doing it right, you're involved in, like everybody's flow. It's like a global flow, I mean, I think the thing about the arts is that like you're going for an ideal. That's what I love about music, at least, is that like the pursuit of great music is the pursuit of an ideal, which is like perfection, which doesn't exist. Or it does. That's the thing about it, is that it's like a paradox, and so I think pursuing great music is always pursuing an ideal. And so for me, that's always been like a twofold, where like I just enjoy pursuing great music as an ideal, purely artistically, like with no meaning or anything. It's just an abstract thing. But then there's also the other side of it, is that there is an incredible analogy that becomes an example for the way that you can structure your whole life, which is like when you're pursuing an ideal, that's like a beautiful thing, and it's messy, but it's beautiful because you're pursuing something that doesn't exist, like perfection, balance. That's what great music is. Great music requires all of these things that an ideal or great life requires, which is balance, extremes, sadness, joy, nuance, everything. And so that's what a lot of it has to do with for me.
I think that's an incredible way of summing it up, that when you are devoting your life to the idea of either perfection or just the potential for greatness in one area of what you do, it kind of suggests that you could attain that in all areas of what you do. That the music is kind of the ideal, but the same kind of things could apply in your relationship to your own health, your relationship to the people that you love, your relationship to yourself, to the work that you do, all of that stuff.
Totally. And society. It's like if you make an amazing piece of music, like it does. I mean, that's like why timeless records resonate the way they do, or timeless songs or timeless symphonies or whatever the medium. It shows an example of like a North Star, where it's like, wow, something that is perfect is possible. It's an ideal, So I'm really interested in that. Like, it's a big reason why I'm involved in this, I think.
But it's funny, man, talking to you, I realize how much optimism there is in your worldview, and maybe that, is age appropriate, or maybe that's just who you are. But it makes me wonder if eventually that optimism is kind of beat out of us over time, or if in fact the optimism is self-fulfilling. Like if you walk into the world with a bunch of optimism, then the world will return it to you. And if you walk in with a bunch of cynicism, then that's what the world will return to you.
I think that's exactly what it is. The latter is that I think it's what you bring to it. That's my worldview, is that if you walk into the world with optimism and whatever, or negativity, it's like that's what you're going to get back. I really believe that. Mm-hmm. I've just seen that. That's what my life has been. You get what you put in. So that's what it is for me.
You said something to me recently about how you're in a space right now where one of the things that's being asked of you a lot is that you write presentations, bios, introductions of yourself to the world. This is who I am. I'm Michael Thurber. This is what I want to do, whether it's to your publishing company or your agent or, whoever it is, people that want to help you. And in order to help you, they want you to tell them how they can help you. And you said to me, people can't help you until you tell them what you want. And I was so kind of stunned by that, because I realized that, right, we out here, we're waiting for somebody to throw us a line, throw us a bone, throw us a life raft. And it turns out that until you know which direction you're trying to go in, nobody can throw you the raft that's going to save you. You kind of have to articulate that. And I meditated on that for a little while, and I realized that actually the way I approach that or see that working for me is I'm very project-oriented, that rather than sitting down and writing a treatise on who I am and what I'm about, that for me it's more effective to say, here's a project, here's an idea that I have. Can you help me execute on this idea?
I think you got to be able to articulate what you want. It's really important. There's nothing selfish about it. It's very selfless. It'll bring you the kind of energy that you want, and it'll give other people the kind of energy that they want. You show up and you just let everybody know right off the bat, like, this is who I am. And that's beautiful. Like, that's selfless. And I think depending on the way you were raised, you might not have known that at first. I didn't know that at first, but that's very selfless, because then everybody knows exactly who they're dealing with, and the people that need what you can give will get it too, and you'll get what you want as well. If you can say what you want, then everybody knows who they're dealing with, and you know who you're dealing with. I think it's really good. And I think there's also a responsibility there with, like, knowing what you want. I think you have to have a lot of self-awareness. All right, man. Well, I got to get on this flight, but I love you so much.
I love you too. I'm so excited for you. Thank you for taking these last minutes before you get on this plane to talk to me, and I'll see you on the other side. When I moved to New York in my late 20s, I had a piece of paper with a short list of names written on it of people that I hoped to connect with, that I would hope to meet when I got here. And one of them was Michael Lenhart. He was just a couple years older than me, but already I was aware of him. He was making waves. I first heard him on a Steely Dan record, Two Against Nature. He played trumpet on that. And I just loved the sound of his playing and his phrasing and his writing. I could tell that he was contributing something fresh already. And man, I really lucked out when we did meet, because he turned out to be an incredible producer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, musical thinker, and friend. He first appeared on this podcast in episode 2. So, of course, I turned to him to get a sense of how he sees the journey at 47.
Hello?
I know you're tight on time, and aren't we all?
Well, but maybe we don't have to be. Maybe I can just find a couple extra minutes here for the birthday boy.
This is the thing, though. I mean, you might be able to find a couple extra minutes, but at the risk of sounding, morbid, we are all dealing with a finite number of breaths here.
Yeah, and that's not even to mention the article I read about the asteroid in the Times, last night. I really should not have read that one. But
what is your relationship like with getting older? Like, I know everybody struggles with it, but for you personally, how are you approaching it?
Well, I'm happier than I've ever been, so that's cool. The experience that comes from getting older is like a superpower that can be wielded if you learn how to just kind of hold it. And it's also been tough. It's tough looking in the mirror and seeing wrinkles and seeing things not as tight or as much hair or different things. It's interesting seeing the people you love also get older. That has more to do with ego and everything, but there's also a great wisdom. I mean, amazingly enough, I've never been happier in my life than I am at 47, and I'm surprised. And that doesn't mean that there aren't moments filled with regret or questioning, whatever. It's just like I'm better equipped to deal with it and to not take things so seriously, because in many cases things have happened before. When you talk about awards or money, failure, successes, wanting things, it's like you've been on the merry-go-round a few times and you go, oh, right, okay.
When you talk about the superpower that can be wielded, is that what you're talking about? Or like, what do you mean when you talk about that?
The experience, like you have, once, as you get older, you have a vast amount of experience to call upon. And if you're in touch with it, then you can use things. And the amazing thing about getting older is hopefully learning that you are not the center of the universe. And that's a very common trait among performers. And I mean, I've been guilty of it forever. And to look at it in a different way, Slide Hampton, the trombonist, just died a couple days ago. And I was on the road with him in 1992 when I was 18. And I loved his playing. We were not very close. He was a wonderful guy, but I remember he was different than Donald Byrd or Clark Terry in that he didn't really want to share. He wasn't going to share a lot, like Freddie Keppert or some of those guys who would put a towel over the valves. And he had earned his stuff, and he was going to play. You would get the lesson from his playing, but he wasn't going to share it. And I have a theory that it bounces from generation to generation. Some generations are more protective. The generation before Slide was like Doc Cheatham, and he would give you his diary. And then it goes from, it bounces around. But my point is that, I'm human. Of course, I don't want to get replaced by anyone. I'm wary of someone being, quote unquote, better than me at what I do. And at the same time, why not share the knowledge that I have?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be here forever. It can't just be about me doing my thing, getting this success, feeling good about my stuff, the world is not revolving around me. So share the stuff, pass it on to the next generation. It doesn't have to be with everyone, but when you find someone that you connect with that's a valuable holder of this information, share it. And often it will come back and boomerang and lift you up,
What about ambition? How have your ambitions evolved?
I think they're more realistic. My expectations are lower in a great way, partially out of just having had more rejection, and like either you're going to go nuts or you go, okay, this is part of it. And then experiencing, sharing things with people, and there isn't one artist who has achieved any sort of success, accolades, writing operas, making a lot of money, who, if you sit with him or her long enough, hasn't gotten tons of rejection. There hasn't been. Actors have roles that they wanted to do and they couldn't, or they were told they were too old for. Business people have business ventures that they wanted to be a part of. Ambition, it's not like I'm a Buddha where I just go, I've learned to want less. No, I still want as much. I can just smile about it and realize I'm probably not going to get it. And even when I do get things that I want, sure, there's a little dopamine, serotonin kick, but it really is. It's never exactly what you think. You win one Oscar and now you probably won another one, or now you're chasing, an Emmy and a Tony, and so it's all just like, it's that hunt and ambition. What is it that gives you joy? And what gives me joy is it all goes back to Goosebumps, is that vitality of like, oh man, where time kind of stands still and you're so excited about what you're doing, and there can be like a little, peppering of anticipation of, well, I want to do more of this, or maybe I'll do something with this tomorrow or next week. But in the moment, you just are on fire with excitement. The older I get, I understand that that's basically your brain and everything having complete attention to what you're doing. It's an absence of distraction. And the distraction is usually, what are people going to think? Oh, I'll get a lot of accolades for this, or this will make me famous, or I'll be able to do this, I'll be able to tour or make an album. And then you're kind of lost in the spinning thing of what this is going to bring, as opposed to, man, I'm in it. Cool. So that's how ambition has changed. I still want things. I still find myself taking a little time each day to wrestle with the promotion beast, because I want to make sure that I work. So I've learned to just kind of segment it and go, cool, I'll do this 4 or 5 days a week and make sure to not live in a bubble, so that I can have more moments filled with goosebumps and provide for myself and my family.
Man, I feel so fortunate to count on you as a friend. And, I was thinking about it before we talked about how I am in awe of so many of my friends. And I even started thinking to myself, is that healthy? Is it healthy to have friendships, with people of whom you are just totally in awe? And I think for me, I have made an effort to seek that out on some level in my life, to be surrounded by people who I'm just amazed by. And, you're one of them. And I feel so fortunate to be able to count on these conversations and the rest of it.
If you are inspired and look up to the people around you, then I think you're living a very rich life. There are times that I realized that I was in competition with my son on the basketball court a couple weeks ago. I was like, well, that's got to be messed up. And I went, yeah, but I'm catching it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. And our tendency, we are so judgmental of others and ourselves, as opposed to spending too much time judging isn't healthy. Think of how wonderful it is that you have such a rich slew of friends. That is called community.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks. Thanks for taking time.
Oh, you got it.
Jorge Drexler is maybe the most influential musical person in my life other than my dad. He's a mentor, I guess. He's a friend. He's almost become like a family member to me at this point. But I started out as a fan of his when I was studying abroad at the University of Seville in the south of Spain, and eventually connected with him and developed a friendship and all the rest. When we met, I was 22 or 23, and he was in his mid-30s, and today he's 57. If you don't know who he is, I think he's one of the most important voices in the Spanish language as a songwriter. He's also one of the most creative musical people I've ever known, and he continues to challenge and provoke and inspire me and countless others. He says something incredible in our talk today, which we had just a few moments ago, in which he says he needs to know that he's not falling on deaf ears in order to work out his ideas. He needs to hear his ideas through somebody else's ears, and today I was the fortunate recipient of those ideas, and so too will you be.
Okay, first of all, I really think that numbers, they're quite neutral. They can't be tragic. There are entities that have a value only related to other entities. So if you're 45 and you think it's a lot, and I wish I remember I was 45 and I used to think it was a lot, but believe me, it is not. Of course, this is the first time you are 45, and I can understand that it might sound shocking, but I'm 57 right now.
Yeah,
I really don't know how it happened. In what moment. I didn't see those years coming. I don't really feel that I have them. I started gradually moving in a world where people are usually younger than me, and maybe pursuing the illusion of me myself being younger. But I find myself always in situations in where I said, at some point I still don't feel a big difference. First of all, 40s, I think the word my best years, the best years in my life, because you're still very strong, and you're already more or less in control of your life, and you're in full power. You also have a big amount of experience. I started to feel the age and the things that happen to you more getting to the 50s. First of all, I used to have a very good eyesight, and then that was the first thing that you notice. I mean, that you can't read small things close. You start going out and wearing glasses, and that's a very strange thing, because you depend on this prosthetic thing like the glasses, no? But of course, then you realize that you've always depended on clothing going out, for example. Yeah. So it's not the same way that you wear your shoes to go out. So it's not that terrible. I think that I started perceiving my age and started reacting in the opposite way. For example, I started dancing very late. Yes. I don't know if this happens to other people, but I started considering dancing when I was 40, and I started taking classes and taking it seriously. And maybe that feeling that you start to see that your body is not eternal. It's something that theoretically, but you start to feel some point of your life, and wanting to take the most out of your body, and that really made me, I'm doing so many things for the first time, always, that I think that's the way I measure my age, or the age in general. No, the feeling that you're in uncharted territory. Yeah. I never thought about that, really. I'm just starting to think about that talking to you right now. No? That's why I like talking, because you see things through the ears of somebody else.
As my father says, I learn how I feel when I hear myself say it.
Yes, when you hear yourself, when you hear somebody else listening to it. I mean, because it also requires another ear. That's why I say I know how I feel when there's ears to tell it to, you know.
Yes.
That maybe it comes into your mind more and more, talking about getting older and the figure of death that starts to get close to you. You start thinking about it. But we are that conscience of finitude, you know, that's exactly what defines our species, you know. That's what make us unique. No other things. I mean, there are other species that make tools, and other species that of course they have feelings, but we know that we will be here for a time, not forever, and we can see it in other persons. No, you have to believe in that, in death, because you only see other people dying. I mean, you never see yourself really.
Yes.
or when you see it, it's no longer useful for your knowledge. You know, I don't know how to say that. At the same time, that same awareness of your finitude, it's what drives you to do things, to write songs, to start things, to plant things. I don't know, to start thinking about. You know, I somebody was interviewing Jorge Luis Borges once, and they told him, Maestro, you are immortal. I've been talking about his art, and he said, dijo, no nos pongamos pesimistas, dijo, no, let's not get
pessimistic.
let's not get, please don't be pessimistic, dijo, no. I think he was so intelligent, so lucid, that he wrote this book about los inmortales, no, the immortals, and he got to get a glimpse of what it would be to have an endless life, and I can't think of a worst nightmare, because all your drive comes from your finitude. Taking the death out of your perspective, it's like taking the blood out of your muscles. You know, it's you just sit there like they were sitting all the immortals in this story, just not even waiting, just sitting there. You know. Yeah, the children. Some children here in the neighborhood.
The sound of the children is exactly in the right time. They came exactly at the right moment. I was very focused on the idea of youth as it related to my success, because I started to work as a musician when I was young. And in fact, a lot of the feedback, the commentary I got from the world around me was not, he's so good, it's, oh, he's so young.
You started really early, of course.
And so my relationship with success was very tied to my age. And I think that's why I'm reflecting on it now. And part of the reason I thought about talking to you was because you have reached tremendous success in an area that started to come to you a little bit later in your life. You had already kind of asserted yourself. I mean, the music, I'm sure, was always so important to you, but you started out as a doctor, and then you kind of had a revolution in your life later on. So you're maybe not so tied to that same sense of youth and success.
I think it's a very bad combination, youth and success. You were lucky enough that it got to a certain point and it stopped.
Yes.
I know very little people that were successful at a very young age that have a happy life. I don't know how to say that. I started making a living on music when I was 31 or 32. And then I started doing good, you know, having what you say is, you could call success, not a tremendous, because I never had that idea that I'm happy with what I achieved, but I don't have this idea of success, you know, like a big one in my situation. And but it started working for me when I was 40. So, you know, we met when I was in my mid 30s. I was very surprised that you had my record, because nobody had it. You know, it was like I was an example of failure in the music industry in Spain. But at the same time, I myself was so happy, because I had turned my life from working in a hospital to working in a recording studio with guitars and microphones, that I felt already a complete success in what regarding my happiness in life. You know, I learned that where good happiness comes from, because you have a lot of ways to achieve happiness. You know, but I learned a deep happiness from doing what you love, and it doesn't get much better than doing what you love. But when you start very young with that, glory is a very powerful drug. You know, and I love this phrase of Antonio Escotado, who passed away last week, a friend of mine, my favorite philosopher and a big friend of mine. And he used to say, I'm going to say it in Spanish, and you'll help me translate it. He said, merecimiento no siempre lleva al éxito, o sea, hacer algo como para merecerlo, ¿no? Deserving, ¿cómo se dice merecimiento?
Deserving, what you deserve
doesn't always lead to success,
yes.
but it leads to self-esteem.
Yes, self-esteem.
And there's nothing more than that. I mean, that's the best that you can achieve. I mean, there's nothing more important than being happy with your choices. Sometimes merecimiento, deserving it, may come together with success. Sometimes,
yes.
But they don't necessarily go together. Yes. Self-esteem, it's like the highest aspiration that you can have.
You know, Mose Allison has a line, he says, when push comes to shove, thank God for self-love.
That's also related with age in a very important thing now that I realize that I have to tell you about age. It's that, you know, it's also all about self-esteem. I told you that I was feeling young regarding the amount of new things I was doing. Yeah. That is exactly, you know, the opposite of nostalgia. For me, nostalgia is the opposite of self-esteem. It's loving somebody that maybe it's you, but loving this person in another era, you know? And so it's actually a way of not loving yourself at that very precise moment, you know? So the only thing I can say is try to love yourself. Try to love yourself today. I mean, so do something that makes you proud of yourself today. Start something. I don't know that. I think being old is having your behaviors or your costumes or your
rituals,
the things that you use. Yes. Is having your rituals getting old. You know, you have to renew your rituals in a little bit. You know, our brain is a machine designed for repetition.
Yes.
But that loves novelty, novedad,
yes.
no?
Yes.
We are designed. So I think it's very important you bring new at some point, you know. And I think when the moment that I lose that anhelo, I don't know how to translate anhelo, you know, that
kind of a desire, right? It's a sort of a desire.
Yeah, but you know, but desire is more related to a sexual thing, and anhelo it's more like a wish, you know.
Yes.
It's like to long for something, to wish for something, but there's not exactly a translation in English. I think that's actually what keeps me going and keeps me, we can say, to name it at some point, it keeps me young, because I do feel young.
Yes. No, I know you do.
Although I'm 57 years old, but it's I don't really feel it. So
I hope to continue to challenge myself and make changes to my rituals, but I hope that one ritual I don't change is these conversations that I have with you, because I cherish them and I value them, and I'm so happy to have you in my life to have these conversations with.
Conversations are vessels. You just have to change the contenido,
yes,
the content.
The content, exactly. Well, Jorge, I look forward to our next vessel, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, man. I'm sorry I was a little distracted walking with the dog, but that lots of things come out of distraction. So I'm happy to do this in this way.
I have seen you write some of your most important songs in the midst of incredible distraction.
I think distraction is good.
Daniel Levitin is a neuroscientist, writer, musician, record producer, and I'm proud to say a friend. I first became aware of him through his book, This Is Your Brain on Music, which was a big deal for so many of us when we discovered it, because it showed us what's happening in our brains when we listen to music. And eventually we became friends, started working together. As a matter of fact, a solo album of his original songs that I'm proud to say I produced is coming out December 10th. It's called Sex and Math. It was made in Brooklyn just before the pandemic, and I'm so pleased that it's coming out soon. So I encourage you to check it out. But Dan is somebody who I also turn to for wisdom and advice and conversation. He was episode number 3 of the podcast back in the day, so I've been counting on him for these kinds of conversations for a long time. When we were working on his record, he was also in the process of researching his book, Successful Aging, A Neuroscientist Explores the Power and Potential of Our Lives. And he was in the process of conducting these interviews and conversations with exceptional people in their 80s and even older. So I knew that he would have some well-developed thoughts on this subject already, and of course, he did not disappoint. As you can probably relate, maybe you can relate to that phenomenon where you're walking the dog or taking a walk and an idea pops into your head, and then the next 2 days of your life are just devoted to trying to turn that idea into a reality. That's what this has been for me.
Well, you are, again, proving yourself to be far more efficient than me, because when I get those dog walking ideas, it takes me like 2 months to do something about them, to figure out what I'm going to do, not 2 days. So
I probably would have taken longer if I had it, but I wanted to get this episode done on my birthday, which is tomorrow. So deadlines they're good. Deadlines are always good for me. But I thought of you. You were teasing me when I wrote you the email inviting you to do it, because I said I thought of you immediately because, and then I said because you have written about this, researched it, and I've also seen you take chances in a later stage of your life.
Right. You're stepping around this very gingerly. I'm going to be 64 in a few weeks. I'm going to have my "Will you still feed me? Will you still need me?" birthday.
Yep.
I can no longer rightly be called a middle-aged man. I'm an old man.
And this, it just so happens that I've seen you release what I believe to be your first solo record in your 60s and getting ready to release your second one, and the one that we worked on together in your 60s. I remember when we were working on it, talking to you about how important you felt it was to continue to do new things, take chances, put yourself in unfamiliar situations as you get older.
Absolutely. There are neurostructural and neurofunctional reasons behind this, which is just a fancy way of saying your brain changes. Mm-hmm. And as we get older, we become, this is a cliche, but we become more set in our ways, more complacent, and it shows up in a lot of funny ways. When you're 25 or 30, you're not everybody, but many people are willing to try all kinds of new things. Let's go to this new restaurant. It's a new kind of cuisine you've never heard of before. Tanzanian food. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll go. By the time you hit your 50s and 60s, you're thinking, well, there's this restaurant down the street that I really like. I always get a good meal there. Why do I want to change that? And that kind of complacency steps in because of changes in our neurochemistry. The exploration chemicals are reduced. We don't really know why. And from a psychological standpoint, Leo, we've spent decades figuring out what we like, and we know what we like. Mm-hmm. And so we figure, well, I don't know how much time I have left. Mm-hmm. I'm going to spend that little time, the precious time I have left, doing what I know I like. Mm-hmm. But that's the enemy to successful aging and longevity, that kind of thinking. The idea is to not leave behind what you know you like, but to add to your repertoire. It's basically exercising your brain and your spirit, doing things that you haven't done before, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, meeting new people, embracing new ideas. The reason for this is that each new experience puts down new pathways in your brain. It makes new connections. This is what's called neuroplasticity. And as long as you keep building up new connections, your brain is going to be running like a well-oiled machine. It's not going to atrophy. Even in the face of disease, it's going to be more resilient. It's an immune system boost for the brain to be learning new things. And so, as you said, I put this into practice in my mid 50s. About 10 years ago, I realized, well, I've got to be less complacent. So as you and I've talked about, I took flying lessons to get my pilot's license.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared of heights, and that really put me out of my comfort zone. And I started working more diligently at songwriting and decided, I've never had a songwriting teacher, but now is the time. And I think we could all do that in different ways. And again, it's without necessarily rejecting your past.
Yeah.
It's about finding new things in small and big ways. Taking flying lessons is completely different. Making a solo album for me wasn't like taking flying lessons, but I'd never been the center of attention in a recording session. I'd always been the sideman or the producer or the engineer or somebody in the background. So it was very uncomfortable. Yeah. And then having someone produce me was a new experience, which you did with Grace. And you put together a band for me a real kick-ass band. It was a delight to seed Control.
Yeah.
And turn it into a collaboration and just see where things went. That was also out of my comfort zone as a producer.
When we were making that record, you were also in the process of writing your book on successful aging, and you were just in the thick of these interviews and these conversations with people about their experience with aging. Were there any major takeaways that you still carry with you today as you approach your 64th birthday and whatever lies beyond?
Absolutely. The story that I heard over and over again, so as you say, I interviewed a number of people who were generally over 80, all the way up to 103. And the message over and over again from Judy Collins, Jane Goodall, former Secretary of State George Shultz, the Dalai Lama, was Jane Fonda, don't stop. Don't stop, don't stop. Don't retire unless you have something to retire to. Don't just plan to sit around. It's not like you have to stay relevant and get tattoos and piercings and act like a 20-year-old. That's not the point. Nobody's saying that.
You didn't exclusively speak to musicians and musical people, though you did speak to a lot of them. Is there something about keeping music in your life that is particularly useful? A special case,
I think there's something special about the arts in general, all the arts. If you're making art in a sort of robotic way, if you're just copying or painting by numbers, and there are a lot of people who do that, either literally or metaphorically, then no, you don't get the benefit. But to me, the artist's way, to use Julia Cameron's phrase, is to be exploring, using all of your observational powers to look at the world a little different each time you look at it, to reinterpret things. And all of that is a tremendous playground for the brain and for neural health and for physical health. And it also, I think, cultivates compassion and tolerance. If you recontextualize what you see and you don't take your prior viewpoints for granted, you're willing to learn new things and see things in a new way. That's the essence of art. And it's the essence of being able to understand that not everyone in the world thinks the way you do. As the Dalai Lama says, he's just one of 7.5 billion people in the world, each of whom has a right to exist and who has a right to their own thoughts and views. You may not agree with them, but they have a right to them. And that comes from an artistic and spiritual approach to life. The problem with spirituality is that in organized spirituality, it can become rather dogmatic and rule-bound. And so you say, well, if somebody doesn't believe in the same God I do, then they don't have a right to exist, which is antithetical to really the core of the ultimate spiritual beliefs of equality. But it's antithetical to art. Your art has a right to exist. Whether I like it or not is my problem, not yours. And engaging with the arts, and I'll say particularly with music, seems to confer a number of advantages. Part of it is that it's manifest over time and not space, so it's always moving. And like life, it breathes, it slows up and it speeds down. If you're any good at it, every musical performance is slightly different because it reflects how you're feeling at the moment. What I learned from touring with Victor Wooten is he's reading the room. He always has the house lights up a little. And there is kind of a loose set list, but he's reading the room and he's modifying the arrangement, the tempo in real time to respond to the audience. And he really connects with people. So imagine doing that your whole life and going through your 50s and 60s and 70s with the sensitivity to what other people are thinking, getting outside yourself.
Yeah, that is so interesting, isn't it? There are a couple of things happening at once, right? One is the sort of individual need to express, and self-expression is real, and we have this sort of compulsion to do it. But you're absolutely right. You're also tuning into the needs of other people when we perform, which is a constant relationship with empathy if you're open to it.
I think that's what is one of the essences of art, is that it's communication that's sensitive to the recipient.
Yeah.
And you could extend the idea of being sensitive to others to just the combo or the band that you're in.
Yeah.
Our job as musicians isn't to call attention to ourselves. Your job as a musician is to make the song sound good, not to make people notice you, but to get lost in the song. And then as a member of an ensemble, your job is to make everybody else sound good. If you're trying to make yourself sound good, then it becomes a competition and everybody's trying to do that. And then you don't really gel. You don't have a group. That's something that we don't teach in music school.
Yeah.
Is that your job as a musician is to make everyone around you sound good and to make the audience feel good, and not, rather than say, hey, look at me, look at what I can do.
So if you could get back in the headspace of a younger Daniel Levitin, are you surprised by the way your life has unfolded? Is it what you expected? Is it not what you expected?
Oh, Leo, I made all kinds of plans for what I wanted my life to look like, and not a single one of them came true. Nothing that I tried to do ever worked. Instead, a bunch of other stuff happened.
Yeah.
And it was all a lot of fun and wonderful, but I mean, not even remotely what I planned. And so, yeah, every day is a surprise to me. And I'm grateful for the surprise, because the surprise makes it interesting. I know people who set out their life at age 18 and just followed a course.
Yeah.
And it's the life they said they wanted. But, 9 times out of 10, they reach 60 and they think, gee, I should have been a little more flexible, or I should have taken more chances, because it's closer to over than not over. I wish that some of my plans had worked out, but it's been terrific. And if I had one message to my younger self, it would be, stop trying to sound like someone else.
Yeah.
And stop trying to worry about all the things you can't play. And just allow your personality and your feelings and emotions to come out through what you can play.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean you stop trying to improve. You realize there's only one me, and people may like me or not like me, but this is what I am.
Daniel Levitin, I do like you, and I'm grateful for our friendship, and I appreciate that you took time to share some of your experience today.
I'm grateful for our friendship in so many ways, and happy birthday, Leo.
Thanks, Dan. Gil Goldstein is one of the finest arrangers alive today. He's one of my favorite people to talk to about music and about life. We had an in-depth conversation for episode 19 of this very podcast, in which he laid out an idea that still stays with me and resonates quite literally every day, and that is the power of the overtone series. In fact, as I recall it, he kind of referred to the divinity of the overtone series, and I think about that often. He's today 71 years old, and I couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk to him today. Was I calling the right number?
You were, and I'm old, and I fell asleep listening to Bill Evans.
Is that true? Gil Goldstein, that's why you didn't pick up? You fell asleep listening to Bill Evans?
That's true.
I have to tell you that if I could imagine you doing anything like on a Wednesday afternoon, it would be exactly that.
You're exactly right, as always, Leo Sidran. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to hear your voice.
How was that?
It was great. Are you in Florida right now?
In Florida.
Are you spending more time there, or are you dividing time?
Dividing time. Like your dad. We come down as soon as it gets cold, and we stay down here until it gets warm up there.
It sounds perfect.
It's not bad. I really resisted it terribly. And I said, really? And now I like it.
Why did you resist it?
I don't know. It just seemed like such a stereotypical thing to do. Go to Florida.
But that's the thing. And you, by many metrics, have not lived a stereotypical life so far.
This is the most stereotypical thing I do.
So, Gil, I thought about you because I'm reflecting at this, what feels to me very much like the, knock on wood, the midpoint of a life, 45 this weekend. You're not young, you're not old, you're kind of right in the middle. And I just started thinking about, okay, well, what does it mean? What do I hope for the, the next chapter? And I thought I would talk to young people, old people, just what are our relationships with getting older, and what does playing music have it to do with it? And, it's a pretty open, undefined set of questions, I'll be honest.
All right, but it's something, honestly, that I've been thinking about a lot lately.
In what way?
Well, I actually have some friends in Long Island that are like, they're not musicians, and they're like, hey, man, why don't you just retire?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't need to keep working.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually kind of got in my head, and I went, why do I have to keep what?
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of, it got me really weirded out. And then I realized I don't ever want to retire.
Yeah.
And that was a kind of I don't know why it was a revelation, but I went, no, I feel like now I'm getting almost good. Maybe get a little better. And I like being a late developer, actually. I like the idea of that. Like, he made a mad dash at the end. Because I was always a slow developer, just like physically and every other way. I was very slow. And I'm kind of a slow developer. I'm really hoping for a burst of growth at the end that's going to really make everything make sense.
You raise various points that I think are worth looking into a little. And the first is, can one retire from being a musician? I always said no. It's a little bit related to the idea of how hard it is to know if you're unemployed as a musician or if you just don't have a gig,
Right.
Along the same lines, it's like, what would it mean to be retired? Would it mean that you don't listen to music anymore, play music, know musicians, think about music? I mean, so much of your life is related to that it seems...
Love music.
Yeah.
You wouldn't love music anymore. You go, you know what? I don't know what attracted to me about that art. That was a red herring. I don't know what I was looking for, and it was a waste of time.
So there's no retiring. The fact that you're even able to ask that question means that you, if you want to, and I feel like you kind of have been, you can determine what the nature of the relationship is, how stressed out you want to be, how chaotic you want it to, how many projects you want to take on, all of that kind of stuff.
That's right. And when I look back at my early life and I think of all the stress, I go, wow, I had all that stress for that movie score that I did. And then it was over and, didn't change the world. But I put myself through such torture. And I go, I don't want to torture myself anymore necessarily. And I want to do just the quality things that I want to do. And that's my hope, that I'm going to arrive at that. And if I do something that I don't particularly want to do, it doesn't stress me out. And I don't get anxious about it.
What do you think the torture was about? Was it because it was an opportunity and you wanted it to lead to something bigger? Was it ambition? Was it musical? Like, what tortured you the most?
That I would mess something up and it wouldn't be good and I would not do a good job. I guess that's what my fear was always. And the people that would have paid me would have gone, well, I'll pay you, but it really sucked. I guess that's what it was. or, that somebody that I admired would listen to it and go, I've been addicted to your dad's interview series. I started with Dave Frischberg when he passed away, and I just started listening to all the things. And now I forgot why I was going to say that, but it was something that Miles was saying in the interview, where he said, if I didn't create, I have no reason to live. He said, I want to create something that my friends go, hey, Miles, that's nice. And I went, well, how cute is that? He just wanted to do something that was nice. And I guess that's the stress that he might have put himself under.
When you were younger, when you were a young musician just starting out, what was your ambition for your career?
Honestly, to have a career. I couldn't imagine, an actual end goal. I just went that I could make a living and keep doing music jobs and learning and developing. That was kind of my goal. I didn't want to be a star. I never dreamt of being like, a rock or jazz star. I just wanted to do a good job at whatever my job was. It was, to serve the quality of the job and perform professionally.
It sounds like you more than exceeded your original ambition or hope.
Well, if you had given me a true and false, you would play with Jim Hall, in college, I would have gone, no, not, I don't believe that, but okay. Thank you. Very flattering. Whatever I did, I would have never believed that I would have done it. Well, Joe Lovano said to me once that if you believe something, you will do it. If you visualize yourself there, you will do it. And so I guess on some level, I kind of optimistically thought I would do those things, but I just kind of thought I was dreaming. But I thought, maybe I will, maybe I will.
You know what that says to me is how important your dreams are, how important it is to decide what you want to imagine for yourself, because if Joe Lovano's right, then it really does matter what you hope for.
If you don't make those leaps of faith, you're going to fall flat and you're never going to get an inch further.
You use the example of Jim Hall as being something that would have just seemed incredible to you, but you did also develop relationships with, I mean, to me, it sounds incredible to say you had a relationship with Gil Evans and you had a relationship with Bill Evans, a friendship with both of them, because they are long gone to me, to my mind. You know what I mean? But when you were younger, they were available and around and you could see them and know them. But it seems like reaching out to people like those two in particular was a pretty significant act of manifestation for yourself,
I guess so, but then again, a lot of that was really kind of luck and happenstance. With almost everything that I've ever done, it's been like kind of dumb luck in a way. I'm looking for more luck coming down the road in the home stretch. And another line that Gil said to me, which I try to keep present in my brain too. He said, every day I wake up and I say a prayer. I said, oh, really? What is that, Gil? He goes, I say, God, I hope I'm lucky today. Huh. So even Gil was waiting for luck.
I'm reminded, going back to my dad's interviews, of the one that he refers to so often with Phil Woods, where he asks Phil, what is it like to be able to play anything you hear? And Phil says, playing is not the hard part. It's wanting to play now. That's the hard part. Remembering why do I do this? The desire, which over time I think maybe does become harder to find without the gig, without somebody calling you. Why do you wake up and do it?
I think we can only keep preparing and keep practicing and preparing for good luck and preparing to be ready for when the phone rings and you're warmed up and ready to play.
Gil, I love talking to you. It's like we pick up, it's been over a year, I'm sure, but we pick up right where we left off.
I love that too, Leo. Happy birthday.
Thanks, man. Thanks for saying yes. Well, if you know anything about this podcast or about me, then you won't be surprised to know that I had to pick up the phone and call my dad, Ben, to talk for this episode. So we have talked on the occasion of your birthday for several years now, and I know more or less how you're feeling when it comes to your own aging. I don't know if coming to you from the context of a person in their 40s thinking about what it means to grow older gracefully, how your work carries you through all of that. If you have a different perception of what you have to say about it, your relationship with, I don't know, moving through time and time moving through you, your idea of your relationship of aging, when you think about me, I mean, I'm turning 45 and I have to say something about this birthday feels more substantial than when I turned 40. There's something at 45 that feels middle-aged, or just it's a real number, more than 40 was.
Well, first of all, that was a very tangled question, if in fact it was a question. And I think that's appropriate because as you start to reflect on your own aging, it's, as I used to say to you, the more you know, the more you don't want to know. But you're at the apogee, right? 45. That's sort of like midpoint, say, of 90, which, if you were an Atlas rocket, you would be at the apogee. And it's gravity grabs onto you from where you are now. And I think we recognize that. And I think that's why we start thinking in terms of what's the future going to be and what's the impact of the unknown. When you're young, the unknown is exciting. But when you get older, the more you know you don't know. And it becomes more confusing. It's not just an opportunity. It's also a problem that you start to think, maybe I'm never going to solve this thing. I mean, you start out, I know you did and I did, determined to find out the meaning of it all. We're going to figure this out. One day I'm going to figure something out. And as you get older, it starts to dawn on you that maybe not. So everything I've said to you in the past about my getting old would apply. The desire for desire is something to watch out for. As you get older, you have less appetite for the fight. Any creative act is a fight. Any creative act it's an attempt to parse the meaning, to pass along your take on the meaning of it all. And it becomes a more and more difficult challenge. That's why when you see somebody like Philip Roth deciding, that's it, I'm not going to write anymore, it's shocking, but it's understandable.
One thing that I've been thinking about just in the last 24 hours is exactly what you say, that you start to look for, what is the impact? What is the contribution? What is it for? What am I leaving behind? And at the same time, life becomes more and more a very refined search for presence in every moment. It's an interesting paradox because on the one hand, you're looking for just this moment to be fully here. And if you add up enough of these fully here moments, then you have a life. And yet, you want there to be something more than that. You want it to add up to something bigger than that.
Bigger than life? The only thing bigger than life is death. We know that. It's the only thing that defeats life. You're searching for this? Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. Fortunately, we're in an art form, let's call it creative music, jazz music, whatever you want to call it, that has this campfire aspect to it. You get to sit around a campfire with your peers and create it. And as you get older, in some ways you simplify what you're doing, you get better. This isn't the case with the solitary arts, the writing, painting, whatever, which has got to become desperately difficult as you get into your 80s because you're fighting all the fights we've been talking about. And at the same time, you're on your own. We're not, man. I mean, in a way, we've already determined that just sitting with somebody who appreciates what you appreciate and listening to music is a terrific thing. Even if you're not creating yourself, the social aspect of jazz can keep you young. It can keep you vibrant. And that means you're connected to this desire that we're all looking for to make our days worth living. I mean, that to me is what becomes missing as you get older. You know, your emotions start to flatten out, and they really do. Not at 45. At 45, you're just in the heat of battle, man. You are right there. I think 45 to 55 is the most impactful, and maybe because you're asking yourself the bigger questions now, and that's going to impact your work. Right now, thinking of these questions you're thinking about, how do you age in the arts, is an indication that you're in a powerful position. It's when you don't have the question in mind anymore, you're in trouble, frankly.
Do you see that there's a distinction between wisdom and experience?
Absolutely. Experience does not necessarily come with wisdom, but wisdom absolutely comes from experience. With wisdom comes a kind of peace, you know, and a kind of separation from the big questions that drive us, you know, because you're aware that you're not going to come up with an answer. And so experience, on the other hand, can just be a series of assaults. It doesn't necessarily add up to anything. I don't know if wisdom's any better, frankly. At least it's more peaceful. I think that is true. As you get older, there is a peace. There can be, especially if you've fought the good fight, man. I mean, you woke up every day, you had a project in mind, and at the end of the day, you've chipped away at it somehow, and you go to bed with a list for tomorrow. As long as that list is there, you're doing fine.
You know, there's the old adage that, you know, music will either kill you or
keep you young.
Do you think that's true?
The greatest thinkers in the world have hypothesized that the reason we're here on this planet is to have experiences and to be shaped by those. And some of them believe that the reason for that is because we're going to come back again and again and again until we get it right. Even if we're not coming back again and again and again, it's an interesting idea that the reason that we're here is to experience growth. It's a nice way to look at it because that gives meaning to the suffering that we do, the assault, the constant hearing no, the impossibilities of achieving 90% of what we're going after. And not being grateful for the 10% we do because we only sense the loss. It's endemic, you know, because without that, maybe there's no getting better. There's no striving. I don't know where I was. Where was I?
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that concerns me as I grow older. This is exactly the kind of thing that I'm worrying about.
Well, you're not wrong.
Did your life turn out the way you thought it would? And at what point did you start thinking that your life would turn out in any way at all? I mean, did you always have a hope for yourself?
No, I had no idea, no plan, no hope, no nothing. I was just out there scrambling, you know. My life has been so much grander, so much more rich than I ever thought could happen to me. I didn't imagine any of it. But you know what? It's still me inside here. It's still the same frustrated, confident, scared, hopeful, dark. It's still the same person that was here at age 6 or 7 whenever I became conscious. Nothing really changes that much, even with great success or great failure. I don't think we change that much. And so it is kind of like the ladder we climb, and maybe we never get to know what the destination is. And I know, as Satchel Paige said, don't look back. Somebody may be gaining on you. That could be good advice. No, I've been very fortunate, Leo. You know that.
What is a successful life?
Yes. Of course, the classic definition is leaving the world in a slightly better place than when you found it. And I think an amendment to that would be on a one-to-one personal level. Being able to be kind and intimate and caring with the people around you. And because you've chosen who you want to be around and who is around you, it's all within your hands. I mean, you shouldn't one thing for sure, you should not hang around with people you don't like or who don't appreciate you or don't make you a better person. A successful life is spending time with those people who make you more who you are and bring you out, because that's all we got in the end is the ability to find out who we are and maybe with a little work, change it for the better.
Howard Becker, known to his friends as Howie, is 93 years old. He's an American sociologist who made major contributions to the field of sociology, particularly the sociology of deviance, sociology of art, and sociology of music. He also started out as a piano player. I think he sort of carried his understanding of the musical life of musicians and even just a kind of a relationship with professional musicians all the way through. The times that I've had to spend with him, he's wanted to talk about songs and playing in bars in Chicago and the life of a jobbing musician and all of that. He's also a tough nut to crack, I won't lie to you. I first spoke to him on the podcast for episode 110. We had a lovely conversation at an apartment that he had in Paris a few years ago. And I thought, I can't do this episode without reaching out to Howie Becker to see what he has to say about the process of aging and how, from his perch on high at 93 years old, he sees the world and the process of growing older. And talking to Howie reminds me a little bit of the old story of the man who was searching for the meaning of life. And he decided that he was going to have to go to the Himalayas and climb to the top of the mountain and find the guru who was there. And so the man gave up his job and walked away from his family, pretty much renounced all of his earthly possessions, and took himself on this trek up the mountain to find the guru. And after months of toil and hard labor, he finally got to the top of the mountain, where he found, in fact, the guru sitting cross-legged in meditation. And the man waited patiently for the guru to open his eyes, and eventually the guru did open his eyes and looked at the man, and the man looked at the guru, and the guru said, "How can I help you?" The man said, "I've come all this way. I need to know what is the meaning of life." The guru thought for a moment and said to him, "Life is an orange." And the man said, "Are you kidding me? That's it? I gave up everything for this? I threw it all away? I toiled and labored and suffered and climbed to the top of the mountain for you to tell me life is an orange?" And the guru looked at him and said, "So it's not an orange." Without further delay, here's my conversation with Howard Becker. How old are you, Howard?
I'll be 94 in April.
What does it feel like to hear yourself say those words?
I'm used to it.
Did you expect to live such a long and productive life?
Really, I didn't think about it. I did what I was doing at the time, which is probably the secret.
Tell me more about that.
If you pay attention to what you're doing, we'll put it the other way. If you think about what you're going to do sometime later, you're not paying attention to what you're doing right now.
So the secret is just to be focused on what you're doing at every moment.
Right.
Did you have an idea of what would make a successful or happy life at some point, and did you try to achieve that?
No, really. I mean, it's day to day,
Yeah.
The real reason is that you don't know what's coming, and whatever is coming might be better than you would have imagined, or not. And it's like, you know what it's like? It's like going to work with a new band in a club somewhere, and you don't know what's going to happen. So you do it, and then you find out.
There's that old adage that music will either kill you or keep you young.
Well, that's an old adage, right?
Does it resonate with you?
It's worked for me, when I grew up in the music business, I was, jobbing, working sometimes with the same group for a year or more, playing in clubs in Chicago, bars, behind the bar, sort of accompaniment to everything else that was going on. And I paid pretty much attention to what was going on the stand and tried to do the best we could and have fun. And usually it worked, for the clubs we were in. So that was that.
How important do you think it is to have fun?
It's completely important.
You started out by giving a piece of wisdom, which was to just be focused on what you're doing.
That's not very original on my part.
What do you tell people when they ask you how to live a long and successful life?
Nobody asks me that except you.
What is it like to be the oldest person in every room that you walk
Leo,
into?
Why are you asking all these questions? I mean, they're all very hypothetical.
Oh, I'm a very hypothetical person. I just live in that space. But a few days ago, I was walking the dog thinking, well, what I want to do is I just want to talk to people in my life. And maybe the thing to do is to have a series of conversations with people, friends in my life, people who I talk to on a somewhat regular basis, and just ask them, how do they feel? What do they want? What do they aspire to? Have their desires changed over time, their ambitions, their sense of what makes them happy, And so I started with my daughter, and I'm finishing with you.
I hope your daughter was more helpful. I don't know. I don't have any wisdom. It's all situational. I mean, at the moment, like yesterday, we spent with my great-granddaughter. So, it's a long string there. I was there before they got there, and they'll be there after I'm gone. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to be honest. I could make up something, sound like the old Zeta, but I'm not. I mean, it's not that I'm not sympathetic. I just don't. Nothing happens when you ask me a question like that.
Do you think that there would be a way for you to retire? I mean, is it possible to retire from thinking and writing and doing things in your world?
Well, it hasn't happened yet. I mean, I know people ask me to do things. Leo Sidran calls me and wants me to do something. So what am I going to do? Say no? And, it might be interesting. So I don't know what you expected to hear.
I am in no way disappointed, Howie.
You must have had some idea what I might be going to say. Don't say no, because you that's not true. I don't know. I just, I get up in the morning, I have breakfast, I sit down in front of the computer and see what came in the mail. Sometimes there's something interesting.
Do you make lists of things to do? You never did?
Never.
Do you write down ideas if they come to you?
Not really. I mean, if I get an idea and it's interesting, I'll write about it to myself,
Is it harder to write as you get older? Has it been harder to write?
No, writing is like talking to me.
That sounds really fortunate.
I have a strong sense that I'm not answering the question you would like to hear answered.
No, I'm not looking for anything other than this. This is just great. And I realize that it's probably not a reasonable expectation to walk into a conversation and ask you to give some kind of sweeping generalization about what it is to live a good life or any of that. We all sort of have to find that out on our own.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I had a lot of good friends in academia who that was the best thing they could think of, to be a professor at a good university. And to me, it was, a way to make a living and so that I could get on with whatever I was really interested in doing. And it was fun, being around smart people, which there were some in the university, interesting young people who wanted to pick up a new trade. And I was, very down home about it. I mean, that's what this was a new trade.
Yes. No, you are very down home about it. I get that sense about it, that you're not taken with it with grandiosity.
I mean, being a professor is not a big deal.
Do you think about legacy? Do you think about what you're leaving behind, the work that you've left behind, the way you'll be remembered?
Not in the way I think that means. I mean, whatever happens will happen. I like it when people find some idea that I wrote up interesting and pursue it. But, I don't die of pride or something. Why are you doing this?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It's an excuse to have a good conversation with people I find interesting.
Well, that's essentially my answer to all the questions you asked.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I just went from one thing to another, and it kept on being interesting. When it wasn't, I stopped doing it.
Howie, I appreciate you taking this time today to get a sense of how you think about things. It's really a pleasure to talk to you always.
You're welcome.
There they were, my friends. Sol, Sidran, Zelta, Sils, Zane, Gruber, Baruth, Michael Thurber, Michael Lenhart, Jorge Drexler, Daniel Levitin, Gil Goldstein, Ben Sidran, and Howard Becker. I'm not even going to get into the themes that emerge, the this and the that, the coming and going, the overlap, the contradictions. All I can say is what a privilege to have such friends to count on. I'll be back again in your headspace before you know it. Until then, I'll talk to you soon.